So my burns are healed. Life still goes on. We were still racing speedway. We were still working in the service stations, long hours. Um, every time we'd have an argument, I would take the girls away with me because I didn't want to ever leave them there. And I remember we'd had this huge argument. And I'd had enough. I'm done. I'm out of there. But I took the girls. And I was gone with the girls for about 3 days this time, in which was a long time. And we stayed at a friend of mine's place that we just happened to run into the night that I'd left, and we were driving around in the car wondering where we were going to go. But I was very close to my daughter's father's brother's wife, Lee. And her and I have always been close. We are still close now. We still catch up from time to time. She's a beautiful person. But I'd called in to see her, and she said that my daughter's father was going to call the police and have me arrested for kidnapping, that I'd kidnapped the girls. So I had to take them back. So I did. The eldest daughter begged me not to take her back. She said, please, can I stay with you? And at that stage, she was only a young teenager, and she didn't know that I really could not just keep her, that I would go to jail for it. So I had to take her back. But I didn't return to the house at that stage. I stayed away for another couple of days before he finally came looking for me, and I softened and went back. But I missed the girls, and I wanted to be back there with the girls anyway. But the eldest daughter, she didn't forgive me for that. She felt that I betrayed her. More to that is coming. So with it this time, the eldest daughter feeling like I had betrayed her, approximately about the same time, they had another younger brother that was adopted out. I didn't know much about him. I kind of remember knowing that he existed, but at the same time that I'd taken her back and she had to stay with her father had signed the adoption papers for the little one, the little boy that wasn't with us, to be adopted. Like, I always wanted him, when I found out that he was there, that, can't we get him and bring him home here with us? But he would just say, no, he's safe, he's settled where he is, he has a good life, leave him there. And he was settled and he was safe. But I think that the eldest daughter deep down thought that I had persuaded their father to sign the adoption papers, but I didn't even know it had happened. So she rebelled against me, something terrible. And we went through a couple of years of really rough times of her rebelling against me. She hated me, and I was devastated. I remember I cleaned her room one day because she would never clean her room. She was in that rebellious time. And she came home and she said, I don't want you to clean my room. And she threw everything on the floor. Her TV she threw on the floor and broke it. And I was horrified. I'm going, oh, darling, if only you knew how much I really love you. But I was absolutely scared of her at that time too. But after I'd taken the two girls home and was going to get arrested, and the eldest daughter and I were going through a hard time, and I wanted a baby of my own. I realised that it didn't matter how much I loved these two girls, all three of the kids, the eldest boy too, they were not mine. Regardless of how I felt about them, they were not my children. And I wanted a child of my own to love, to truly love, that nobody could ever take off me. So I stopped taking the pill and I fell pregnant. Her father, my daughter's father, never wanted any more kids. He already had 4 kids. One wasn't with us. He really didn't want children, but I wanted a baby. So I just did it. Probably not a good thing, really, but it's something that I've never regretted. My daughter is the best thing that ever come into my life. We are still very close. She's like my best friend. And she gave me purpose, real purpose in my life, my daughter. When I fell pregnant with my daughter, her father told me he wanted me to have an abortion. He said it wasn't his, that he couldn't have kids anymore. And I knew that was a lie, because it would be an absolute impossibility for me to have been pregnant to someone else, because I certainly hadn't had any kind of relationships with anybody else for a lot of years, long before him. My mother wanted me to have an abortion. All my friends said to me, don't have this baby, have an abortion. And I was the only one that stood up and said, no, this is my baby. I chose to have it, and I am going to keep my baby. When I was heavily pregnant, one day my daughter's father said that one of his old girlfriends was coming to visit, and her husband. And I had no real choice in the matter, but I was quite happy for her to come. It was hard, believe me, it was hard having this woman come to stay in our house with us. I was going through a hard time with the eldest daughter and heavily pregnant, very young. But I accepted her into our life, and actually her and I became the best of friends. We were there for each other all our lives, right up until she died only a few years ago. We were very close, and I don't regret his ex ever coming into our house. She was a beautiful person. More to that as time goes on. But it was hard for me as a young girl, pregnant, to accept another woman coming in, especially somebody that he had been in love with for many years. If the shoe had been on the other foot and I wanted somebody to come and stay at our place, especially a male or somebody that I'd had previous relationships with, I wouldn't have lived through it. Believe me, he wasn't that kind, but I had to accept it from him, and I did. I absolutely loved every minute of being pregnant, all the way through, from the start to the finish. And my daughter was 2 weeks overdue from the due date, and I was still supposed to go to work that day. I worked all the way through the pregnancy, and she was born Labour Day 1983. But the day that I went into labour, my daughter's father's ex was in the house, and her husband was there on that weekend. They'd been there all weekend. Everybody in the house had been drinking. Nobody was capable of driving, except for me. I never drank. I never drank at all when I was younger. And it was like, oh my God, how am I going to get to the hospital? And I was about, in total, 30 hours in labour. So I put everybody to bed as much as I could to sleep it off. I said, I'm in labour. But the youngest daughter stayed up with me. She was timing my contractions, and I was doing her hair and things, and that's it, because she wanted to come to the hospital with me, but she wasn't allowed in the end. Her father didn't let her. But when I woke them up, my contractions were 3 minutes apart, and I said, well, come on, I've got to get this out of bed and go to the hospital. So I went and woke my daughter's father up and made him a coffee and got him to get me to the hospital. It was time to go. So we got in the car and we headed off to the hospital, and then my daughter's father said, I need to get a packet of smokes. And of course it was in early hours of the morning by this time, and there wasn't really any shops open back then, so we had to make this huge big detour out of the way to get him his smokes. So we did that. We got to the hospital, and instead of going through the boom gates where you could get into the hospital and park right up top, he said no. So he parked down the bottom of the hill, and in a contraction I had to walk all the way up this darn hill to get into the hospital. But anyway, I got there, and then they put me in the labour ward, and they gave me an epidural in my back. and I went to sleep through the rest of my labour. I didn't even feel it, all of it, until they were slapping me on the face saying, wake up, you've got to deliver your baby now. I was exhausted. I'd worked right up until the day she was born, and I was still supposed to go to work that day. So I was just exhausted. But they woke me up, and I woke up, and here were my legs up in stirrups. There was 15 young doctors all looking in the one spot, and I've gone, oh no, I've died and gone to hell, please let me alone. I couldn't push her out. But then they had to put the forceps on her and suction on her and everything because I was just so exhausted. I couldn't push her out at all. But her father wasn't in the room. He didn't like the idea of all these young doctors being in there, and he'd have cracked it, so he just stood outside the door. But she was delivered okay. They rushed her out of the room because apparently she'd gone to the toilet inside me, so they'd rushed her out to clean her up, and then he came in after it was all finished, and I said, oh, we've got a little girl, and he thought he heard him say, we've got a little boy. If it was a little boy, I was going to send it back. I bought everything in pink, and they couldn't tell the sex back then, but I bought everything in pink. I said, if it's a boy, it's going back. So I had my little girl. I was happy about that. I was in hospital for about 9 days. It was really funny. After the next morning when I woke up, they'd put me back into the ward, and I woke up in a room with just me and another girl. And I woke up, and here was one of my girlfriends. She was in the same room as me. It was just the two of us, and she'd had a little boy. I didn't know she was in labour having hers, and she didn't know I was there. So it was quite a surprise. It was a big adventure for the two of us together. But we were both in there for 9 days because both the kids, her little boy and my daughter, ended up with a temperature. So they ended up in intensive care.